We all have within us what Pujya Swamiji calls our inner GPS, right? The cars have a GPS, or you've got your, Google Maps on the phone, the GPS. You want to know the direction, where to go, plug in your destination, and it'll tell you, turn right, turn left. So we all have that inner GPS. You can call it a divine voice. You can call it the higher self. You can call it intuition. These are all different ways of describing that, an inner knowing. Not a knowing that comes from my five senses, not a knowing that comes from something I've seen or heard or touched or tasted or smelled, but nonetheless, I know. We all during our life have had experiences of inner knowing. Some of us have listened to those experiences and been very happy we did. Some of us have not listened to the intuition. We've doubted it, we've ignored it. Later on, we've regretted, oh God, I really should have listened. Nonetheless, we all have that inner voice. Now, what Anuradhaji has asked is, how do we distinguish that inner voice from all of the other voices that are also inner voices? One being, in the hypothetical example I gave, the voice that says, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're unworthy, But there's dozens of inner voices we all have. We have the voice of our fear. You're going to fail. We have the voice of our desires. Here's what I need. Gotta get that. That's the key to my happiness. If I just could go to that place, if I just could have those clothes, if I just could marry that guy, if I just could lose 10 pounds, then I'd be happy. Voice of our desires. We have the voice of our ego that swings the pendulum from the positive to the negative, but it's all ego. So the ego is the same one that says you are the most worthy, and the same one that says you are the least worthy. Just different faces of the same ego. We've got the voices of our parents, both the positive stuff and the negative stuff. We have the voices of our teachers. We have the voices of our society, our culture, that also tells us, here's what success is. Certain cultures, success is, you better have a job. No, you shouldn't stay home only and take care of the kids. What do you mean you don't also work full time? Some cultures, it's the opposite. What do you mean you work full time? My God. How could you possibly let somebody else take care of your children? So, voice of culture. You're too fat, you're too thin, you're too pale, you're too dark. What our culture tells us. So we've got all of these voices in our head, and then of course there's the inner voice, that divine voice, and how to tell the difference. The only way is practice. When you meditate, eventually, those other voices become very still. Through the meditation, through the chanting of the mantra, through all of our meditative practices, that nonsense slowly becomes quiet. The inner voice, as you meditate, becomes actually louder. A gentle louder. It's not a shouter, it's not a screamer, it's not a beater. But it becomes more obvious. Such that we recognize it. The dilemma becomes when we try in moments of crisis or moments where we have to make a decision, where I don't know my inner voice. I'm not a meditator. And suddenly now there's 100 voices in my head. It's very, very difficult at that moment to distill. And this is why having a spiritual practice is so important. You know, if you think about, say there's a nursery of 50 babies inside. Mothers are gathered outside talking to each other. Suddenly from inside the nursery, one baby cries. Now to an onlooker, every baby's cry sounds exactly the same. But a baby starts crying inside, and one of the women, only one, there's dozens of women standing outside, one of them says, "That's my kid," and rushes inside to pick up her baby. Now, to an outsider, there is absolutely no way to distinguish this cry from that cry. And there are infants inside. I'm not talking about young kids talking voices. Infants crying, screeching. How does that mother know? Because she's so connected to that child. She has held that child on her breast for so long. That child lived in her body for so long. That child is her. So the voice of that child, I don't think so. Because it happens with adopted mothers as well. It's not actually only a birth thing. So you've carried the child, great. Even if you haven't, you've adopted the child, it still happens. It's a connection that is so deep to that child. When we have that same connection with our own inner voice, then and only then, in moments when there's 100 voices going, like 50 kids screaming in a nursery, are we going to know, that is my inner voice. The other way to know, and there's several techniques, but for me personally what I've found is the inner voice is almost never frenetic. It's not hyper. Desires are hyper. Gotta have it now. Fear is hyper. No. The inner voice is almost never frenetic, even in moments of great importance. So even in my life, in moments when I, came to India and had this experience on the banks of Ganga and knew instantly, this is home. The voice was there. It was instant in that moment. But even in such a powerful moment, it was not frenetic, it was not hyper. It was not now. There's a quality to intuition, to the divine voice, that is much calmer than the frenetic drama of our fears and of our desires and of the rest of it. So that's one way to know. The other, for me, way to know is the voice that makes you feel separate from yourself. So the voice that puts you into the body, whether what the body looks like or what the body can do. So the voice that says, you can't do that, you're not smart enough. You can't do that, you're not good enough, you're not rich enough, you're not young enough. The voice that is identifying you by the body is not going to be your intuition. Because the intuition, the inner voice, is it's soul. It's not body. And so the more a voice is trying to stick you into a false identity, the less I would trust it. And third, when you listen to the inner voice, when you're lying in bed at night, there's gonna be a voice that when you listen to it, enables you to breathe and fall asleep. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean it's not going to be a drastic change in your life, but even if what that voice is telling you is a drastic change, nonetheless, there is a moment of, yeah. And you breathe, and sleep is able to come. The voices of fear, of ego, of desires, of culture are the voices that keep you from sleeping. Those are the voices that are relentless. The inner voice is prepared to wait till morning, if necessary. It's patient, it's there, it's you. And so if voices are keeping you up in the night and not letting you sleep with a frenetic quality, chances are it's not intuition.